only real in my own brain. Everything only doesn't have existence outside my brain. It means there's some kind of boundary between your brain and the rest of reality. Whence doth it come? Where does this boundary arise? Skeleton, the skull.
Well,
You're starting to talk about hypothetical brain chopping up.
I don't think that's a problem for your view anyway, because you are a panpsychist and you think that everything is reduced down to, well, not reduced down. True. Everything relates to some sort of phenomenal state. Anyway, so you could just say, well, yes, these exist, but they're mental. They require a mind to conceive of them.
It turns into a question of where does the mind start and stop? Why not just call it a brain? That's what's being said. Why not just say you need a brain to conceive of these things? Does it have to be a mind? I'm not asking you to answer, but that's a question with no answer.
Okay. So how do you draw the distinction between the brain and the mind?
The mind causes the brain. So the brain is a subset of the mind. That is really hard to visualize, though. I guess largely I don't think about the mind-body problem because it's inconceivably complex. I think about it insofar as like to solve it for physics so that there's at least a starting point of sanity rather than cogito ergo sum, which is really just nonsense.
So do you hold that the mind, you probably hold that the mind is immaterial. So the mind is a immaterial thing which has causal powers. Is there any evidence in the physical world that indicates that something that's immaterial has causal powers?
Is light material?
No, I'm saying in the sense that it
light have causal. Let's put it this way: does light have causal powers?
Bring about something physical,
right? But does light have causal powers? Let's put it that way. Obviously, the answer is yes.
Yeah.
Like if you want an obvious example, like photosynthesis, which they've established as quantum transition.
Sure.
There's no question that it's not a question as to whether light has causal powers.
I don't see how that pertains to.
That's what your mind is made of.
Something phenomenal, like a mind.
Your mind is made of light on the physical level. Physical manifestation of your mind is light, tangled light. Onion trees thing that Quantum Foam named. Thank you for that, by the way. It's good to have.
Okay, so what part of the mind indicates that it's composed of light?
Well, it's just a process of elimination, but the reason that there's symmetry in life. Only possible explanation is light. So it's not a question of whether the mind is made of light, is demonstrable directly, easily. It's a question of what is the animating principle of light. The answer is some type of Platonism. It's not going to be, shitty Platonism, right? The good one. There's two questions being asked there, but we have to accept that, at some stage, the light thing is definitely beyond. There's no pushing back on the consciousness being comprised of light, essentially theory. It's been established beyond a shadow of a doubt.
I don't see the part where that leads to Platonism. That's weird.
Platonism is okay. So put away the crap about the emotional shit. Okay, there's too much fucking emotional shit in that shit. So just put that away. Just think about a sphere. Like, there are no spheres in the physical world. There's no such thing as a perfect sphere, even though we can think of one. There's no such thing as a material perfect sphere. It's still the animating principle. So it's there, but it's not there. See? It can both be there, but not really. Not observable, but still present. The sun is almost a sphere, pretty much. Like less than a 1% of deviation. It's like 0.001% or something. Why? Well, because there's a tendency to a sphere. There's no material spheres. Is that a contradiction? No. Paraconsistent logic that you need modelize things along the three-dimensional modelization called the animating principle. Call it Platonism, but that's not really what is the correct name for it, but that's what I'm going to call it. Metaphysics, for those of you just showing up now, is a little bit different, which is framing things pre-space temporally, right? So what we observe, materialism and all that stuff, like that's all space-time. Space observables and time observables, so it's like that gets kind of boring. Yeah, and there's another thing I wanted to bring up, super important about this A equals A crap. Reason why A equals A is a problem. Yeah.
Not to detract too much.
You don't think that particular existence is identical to itself?
It's trivial, and it's not whether that's true, because that's unfalsifiable, tautological, and trivial. It's whether that's conducive to learning, which it isn't, because the objects we identify are atemporal, like bananas and cups and fish and you know.
Yeah,
so
and
to say A equals A,
part of okay, they're
I'm
ideas,
identifying an apple.
like spheres. Look,
how there's a difference, right? Like I'm saying the sun is a sphere.
Yes,
but it's not really
you're
a sphere.
identifying. Yes, you're identifying concepts within your mind. But I'm saying, how are those concepts within your mind atemporal?
Because the ship of Theseus, right? A boat is a boat if it's a boat, and only if it's a boat, right? Like a boat is only a boat if it looks like a boat and if it acts like a boat. Mainly, the thing is, a boat is a boat mainly because it is treated as a boat. Like if I take an inflatable mattress and I go out in a lake and I call that a boat, well, is it a boat? You know? If A equals A, then Platonism is false. And Platonism is not false because there is an animating principle and it is a non-trivial information positive fact. A sphere is not observable materially, yet is still an animating principle. So to say that the sun equals a sphere, is that true?
If the law of identity is true, then Platonism is false. Jesus.
No, I see I'm tagged in something. I'm scared to look at what it is right now.
My goodness.
I've gone back and read some of these comments after. Whenever I'm talking to Darth, I gotta just like totally focus. Like galaxy brain guy here. Did you get a lot of views on your thing?
About 110 views so far.
Put it on a playlist
more than
on my
Mr.
channel.
Batman. Okay.
Put it on a playlist on my channel, so hopefully that bumped it. Alongside all the other philosophers of the day.
So do you understand what? Yeah, I'll get to that in a second. Do you understand what quantum pinged you on the Sorites paradox?
I'm afraid to read the comments. I'm afraid, so I've ignored it. Would you care to read it?
Sure. A paradox that arises from vague predicates. Typical formulation involves a heap of sand from which grains are individually removed, under the assumption that removing a single grain does not turn a heap into a non-heap. The paradox is to consider what happens when the process is repeated enough times. Is a single remaining grain still a heap? If not, when did it change from a heap to a non-heap? I guess this would apply. This would apply towards the way that you equate abstractions that you conceive of in your mind with atemporal objects.
The point is that there's no heaps in material causality. A heap is something we identify as a useful tool to distinguish something based on function. It's not just substance anymore.
That paradox is just showing an example. right? We could
Paradox.
extrapolate from that and say, yes, that how did something become a mind from non-mind?
There's no such thing as non-mind. So I can just show you the universal mind and how everything else arises from the universal mind. There's no such thing as a non-mind.
No such thing that is empirically observable as a non-mind, or you're just saying it's logically impossible to have a non-mind?
There's two ways you can define reality. You can define it as immanence or permanence. So permanence is, if we want to define reality as permanence, then we'd be saying the laws of physics. If we wanted to define reality as immanence, it would be what's right in front of us right now. Then it's the laws of physics, but it's how they're particularly manifesting right now. Which of those trumps the other in regards to realness? Which is more real? Because that's, it's just going to depend on which one. I'm not trying to say you have to commit. I'm just saying it's probably better not to commit and just accept both as possible and see what they both lead to. That makes sense. Anyway.
Yeah.
My religion, we go with permanence is more real. So back to the question, which was?
Yeah. So, how did you come to the conclusion that concepts in your mind, right, that are conceived of in an abstract way, that equates to an atemporal object, something outside of time?
Didn't come to my conclusions through a process of my own reasoning. Make that clear for starters.
Yes. And the process of that reasoning is temporal. There's a progression of events happening between. Okay,
anything happening is temporal.
Yeah. So. Oh, great. So. Yeah, so the thoughts that are occurring in your mind, of course, they are temporal. But you're saying that somehow the abstractions within your mind are not. You hold that they're atemporal.
Yeah. Well, is a sphere temporal? No.
Yeah, but the abstractions are still part of your thinking process.
That's right. So the thing that's changing is animated by the thing that's unchanging, in the same manner that a sphere is an atemporal entity. I mean, maybe you don't even want to call it an object.
Really,
right?
Not really, because the abstractions don't have any causal powers, so they don't.
Yes, they do.
Oh,
it's like
really?
Saying the sphere. You're saying the sphere has no. The sphere is an abstraction. You're saying the sphere has no causal powers. I'm saying yes, it does. Sphere causes the arrangements of matter. Technically, it's a geodesic, and the sphere is a three-dimensional geodesic. So. Use a sphere as an example shorthand, because obviously if I was going to give that entire thing, like that's a lot of premise accepting. Hi, Clack.
Hello.
How's it going, Clack?
I'm hearing some Kantian takes. I don't know, though.
I don't think so.
I
need a proof of concept before I can
Jen just admitted that abstractions have causal powers. So there's your deep...
Darth, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not on the same level as you, man. Like, philosophically.
Not all. Hashtag not all. Yeah. To say abstraction is extremely vague, so I would never frame it like that, because an abstraction, you're not saying much when you're saying abstraction. Harry Potter's an abstraction.
So phenomenal states give rise to physical states. Is what you're trying to say here.
Numerology gives rise to everything.
I don't think physical states exist.
Phenomenal states would be the states of your consciousness. You're saying that gives rise to the materia, or let's say the physical organ as your brain?
Everything comes from the mind, the universal mind.
Is there
but this isn't a universal mind that you're talking about here. These are your particular thoughts. You're saying that those give rise to physical phenomena. I'm saying
they don't.
Like, how do you know that's the case? Right.
The only physical phenomena your thoughts give rise to are what your body does when it moves around. guess. I guess we need to distinguish between a universal mind and an individual mind, because the order would be that there's individual mind on the human level. So there's the universal mind, which animates the material, which animates.
Okay. Let me put it this way: do you think that the mind?
Sub-mind.
Do you agree with the Kantian idea that the mind gives rise to the impression of space-time as an intuition?
Which mind? Can you say
all minds,
when you're talking
all minds?
You can't equate minds to each other that way. First of all, when we're talking about the universal mind, I'm talking about the hyperbolic figure 8 complement, right? When you're talking about a mind, you're talking about a brain. So let's just say brain when we mean brain. If your notion of a mind necessitates a brain, you should say brain. It's really dishonest to say mind.
Okay. That your brain.
I'm not talking about anyone in particular. Yeah.
Okay. Just say it like that. Okay. So the states within your brain, the physical states within your brain, which are somewhat made up of phenomenal states, you hold that gives rise to the idea of space-time under your view?
Wait. No. Space-time on the primordial level is not arising from your brain at all, but your brain is to some extent a space-temporal
So is space-time independent or dependent on your brain?
Dependent.
Okay.
Nothing's truly independent, but your brain's dependent on space-time.
That's not true.
So that
you live in a single space-time event.
This sounds exactly like Kant, but you're just replacing the mind with the brain, basically.
Well, I didn't replace
Jen,
mind
the
with
rationale alone is real.
You some kind of like voodoo heckler here, because change.
Well, he's a Hegelian, so you're gonna.
So the thinking, like, if you have a thinking
trying to say
subject,
troll?
in order for the thinking subject, like humans, to be able to know the world at all, there must be a sense of an identity or thought and being, right? Otherwise,
something
we would never have
someone just
access
has to keep
to the object
repeating it over and over,
the
even
world.
though it's completely unrelated to the topic, even though it's stomping on the subject and wrecking the delicate balance of wonderful communication it's set up prior. Completely unself-aware.
Jen, what's the argument that Hegelianism is wrong?
It's viciously circular, isn't it, dear? I can't see a single prediction it's ever made that was validated. Look what it turns its devotees into. It's like, yeah, that sounds like a fun ideology. Look at your avatar, clack.
Why are you projecting, Jen?
People say I'm condescending. That's the most condescending. I'm lucky I'm sitting down. That's so condescending, I almost lost my balance.
So while we're detracting,
can you actually explain that image to me? Because I'd love to know what it means.
What image?
You know how you have like that ugly guy who looks like a total sexual failure as your avatar?
Hegel was not a sexual failure.
Well, I suppose it's a sliding scale.
Have you ever read The Phenomenology of Spirit, Jen?
Ooh.
Seems like it'd be up your aisle.
Well, isn't Kant? We're talking about Hegel or Kant? Sorry, but which of them is an idealist?
You sound like a Kant bot.
Hegel is an idealist.
So
I guess you could say Kant was a transcendental idealist, but that's different from Hegel's absolute idealism.
What's idealism again?
Kant thought that we perceived representations of the noumena in our minds, which is created by ideas of the noumena through like a temporal lens.
Knowledge are dependent on mind. Yeah, that ain't true. So, ain't true at all.
Jen, you seem like you figured it out.
It's true.
Are you a solipsist?
She's a panpsychist.
I wouldn't say that I'm a panpsychist. I'm a pantheist, and in this language, that predicts panpsychism, which in another language theoretically wouldn't. As there's a mechanism, it's a necessary mechanism. It's not about particular labels. Mechanism will persist regardless of the labels. Mechanism sort of trumps the labels in terms of importance and causal powers, as say. Think about that. I guess I'm a God solipsist.
I mean,
Dreams in the mind of
And
God.
a dualist and an idealist could say that the phenomenal states give rise to physical states, but in order for that to happen, the phenomenal states would have to be concrete, not abstract.
They're dodging because they're not saying whether light is physical, and they're not saying what role light plays in physicality. So they're essentially saying nothing.
Have you ever watched any of Bernardo Kastrup's content on YouTube?
No.
Well, he would not say, as an idealist, he would not say that the phenomenal states are abstract, because then the phenomenal states would just be equivalent to, let's say, the number 2. And the number 2 is abstract, but it doesn't cause anything. Like mental states, they can give rise to physical states, but they would have to be concrete in order for that to happen, not abstract.
Brain is a physical state that the mind gives rise to.
Right,
Brain
and in order for that to happen, the mind would have to be concrete. In order for that to happen, the mind would have to be concrete.
Mind is light. If light is concrete, then you're sort of throwing out the whole definition that goes against the traditional definition.
Do you know what concrete means? I think you're conflating concrete with physical.
In the Platonic sense, concrete is that's the term. That's the sense I'm using.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, do you know what concrete means?
Concrete. When I say concrete, I'm using it in the Platonic sense, although there may be other definitions, and in that case,
again, none of that has to do with Platonism. What does concrete mean?
There's a definition in Platonism. There may be a new definition that's different from that, but in Platonism, it means observable. Quote, empirical, observable reality is concrete. It's what's modelized with the cave.
No, not all concrete things can be measured. Like, for example, if God were to exist, he would be a concrete being, but God is not measurable. He's immaterial. Well, I'm talking about triomni theistic God. That's a mind. Like, that's it. Right? That would be a concrete being, but it's immaterial, so it can't be measured.
Immaterial concrete being is a contradiction in terms.
No, it's not. What's the contradiction?
Immaterial permanent being is not a contradiction in terms. Is that what you mean?
What's the contradiction with a concrete immaterial being?
Because material is a synonym for concrete. Immaterial could be a synonym, though I don't use it that way.
No, all physical things are concrete, but not all concrete things are physical.
And I guess we need to know what your particular definition of concrete is, please.
A concrete thing is basically something that has causal powers. That's number 1, as opposed to abstractions which don't. And number 2, concrete things have the ability to interact with causal relata. So that's just repeating what I said the first time. And they have a positive ontological status.
Last two things
abstractions are usually predicated negatively most of the time. Like, if someone were to say, like, what does the number 3 consist of? Well, it's atemporal, just meaning it's not in time, and it's immaterial. It doesn't reduce down to physicality. Those are just, most of the time, abstractions are predicated negatively. Whereas concrete things, they have the ability to be predicated on positively. If you say God is a mind, you're saying that God is an agent. He has beliefs, desires. Those are all positive predications. And that God has causal powers. Whereas the number 3 does not. So yeah, no, concrete immaterial is not a contradiction. If I said material immaterial, yes, that would be a contradiction. But concrete is not synonymous with material. So no, there is no contradiction. Oh, she went out.
Sorry about that. All right, so we're just not using the same definitions there. So you said agency. What does agency mean?
Agency,
As
something
agency,
that something that consists of phenomenal states and has beliefs, desires.
Gravity a belief? Do apples desire to fall down from trees? I'm not trying to be difficult here, but you got to understand that, like, we're gonna go in circles until eventually we nail down a metaphysical absolute.
No, apples don't have beliefs. Apples aren't agents. Apples don't have phenomenal states.
Okay, so you got to draw the line. Where does it go from not having it to having it? Why does the apple not have it falling, but we have it doing whatever it is we do?
Because apples don't have minds.
Again, you're presupposing that I can show you the apple's mind. Apples do have minds. They have the same minds as a mushroom. The hyperbolic figure eight, not complement. Did not come up with this.
What's the evidence that apples have minds?
Just put the picture in
the picture in the.
I thought I already showed you magic apples, hyperbolic mushroom penises and stuff.
Okay, sure.
You seen it? Should I share it
I'm just saying sure. Yeah, I've seen it. Sure.
Is that the truth? Or not the truth?
Yeah, I don't see how this has any bearing with my definition. I already said what my definition was for agents, and agents are concrete objects, but they don't have to be material for them to be concrete. There's no contradiction.
It's hard for me to understand what is meant by a lot of what you said.
What's hard to understand about a concrete immaterial thing? Something that is not reduced down to physical states, but has the ability to cause things to exist. I don't see the contradiction.
How do you reduce something down to a physical state?
Well, I'm saying that this thing called a mind outside of space-time, it's not reducible to anything physical. It can't be measured. It has the ability to cause things, but it doesn't have, like, for example, it can't make itself material, because that would be something in time, but it exists outside of time.
Are you saying that stuff outside time is necessarily unable to influence what happens in time? Yes or no?
Well, I was away from keyboard. So what were you saying?
Sorry, I just wanted to know. Are you saying things outside of time can't influence things in time?
No, they can.
Okay, only if they're concrete.
I'm saying that this one thing has the ability to interact with causa relata and still be immaterial. I don't see the problem.
There's no problem. It's a question of definition.
Any triomni God concept. There's no contradiction in any of that.
Why are we back on the triomni God concept?
Because it's the most popular example of a concrete immaterial being that has the possibility to exist.
Well, steel man it. Jesus is not the steel man to the triomni God. Dattatreya is. If you can defeat Dattatreya, then I suppose you've defeated the strongest position for a triomni being. It can't really be defeated because it's a moral lesson. It's true regardless of whether Dattatreya is a real person. It's like saying, well, morality doesn't exist. It's like, well, you can say that, but it's still going to exist. Just because there's a shitty example of a triomni being that isn't moral at all by any reasonable standard doesn't defeat the purpose of the triomni being. I, E, are both approximately equal to 3, plus we have the whole 3 + 1 measurement limit thing, which clearly means something. It is not self-evident on all levels on which it's true. What say you to that?
None of what you said is self-evident. That's for sure. Because the contrary is not impossible.
Yoga is not
anything
self-evident.
that you've said is not necessary. No, it's not. Do you know what self-evident is?
Self-evident is when you hear it and you're immediately convinced by it.
No, not at all.
Oh, so we're using some alternate definition here.
Yeah, the modal ontological argument for Jen's idea of what necessity is. If something is possibly conceivable, then it is necessarily conceivable. If something is necessarily conceivable, then it's conceivable in all possible worlds, and if it's conceivable in all possible worlds, then it exists. There's your modal ontological argument, Jen.
It sounds like a poem. So, did I violate any?
So, do you see
fallacies?
The problem? Do you see the problem in saying that something is self-evident only because you hear it one time and you're convinced by it? Anything could be self-evident by that measure.
No, I'm afraid mysticism is necessarily not self-evident, and I can tell you why, based on how the mind physically works. Something called cognitive dissonance. They'll deny the same things, essentially.
I have a question. Are you fond of weed? What's your opinion on weed?
Neither here nor there. So
have you ever smoked weed?
Possibly. I don't like to promote drug use though on streams. I like to promote healthy lifestyle choices. I like to have a nuanced view, but yeah, it's not any bearing on the opinions. It's better criticism than crazy.
I'm not criticizing you. I'm just saying that there's a lot of similarities in the way you think and the way people who use marijuana think. I don't think that's an insult necessarily. I mean, I know friends who've had marijuana and they go into deep side 10 Bruggencate mode that you're on here right now, kind of.
Okay. You can't relate to that mode?
I can. But
you're not
I can
on
understand
drugs.
I can understand your line of reasoning from your point of view. I just think it's flawed.
I don't think you can understand it from my point of view. You can build a vague model of it. You can convince yourself you know what I'm thinking, but I don't think it's really possible to necessarily empathize with people that way.
Okay. Have you ever debated any people who you think have wacky ideas and you thought, yeah, what substance is this person on? I mean, you have to at some point. We've all been through that.
I have been but my limit is like I don't like promoting people who promote like mental create I guess I call it like fueling paranoia or creating an environment of like bad vibes, like try to pump that out. But other than that, no, I'm not speculating as to what mind altering substances people are on. It's a waste of time.
You should debate Nephilim Free on
no, I don't want to do that. He's not sober, he's drunk, and I just don't want to waste my time with someone who's drunk. I've already talked to him.
I don't think he's drunk. I think he's just senile. There's a difference. Maybe the alcohol use. Maybe he does use alcohol, and that contributes to the senility in a progressive way. But
is that okay? I just don't want to talk to those people. Like I didn't even want to talk to Jay Dyer.
Jay is awesome. I don't know what you're talking about.
I know, but that's like you can do it. I don't want to. Why does both of us has to do it if only one of us wants to?
So what? Yeah. Speaking about that, how was your interaction with Jay Dyer? How did that? What was the falling out of that interaction?
I got bored. I got bored within 5 to 10 minutes.
Did you account for universals? under
cut
your
me off before I could
worldview.
make any arguments. I couldn't really get my point out, and then I said he was using the unholy trinity of trying to differentiate ontology, physics, and epistemology.
Well, I've debated him before.
Oh, I know.
He does that. I mean, just because he interrupts you doesn't mean that that's something to be, afraid of. I mean,
God forbid, there's no value proposition.
if you know your stuff, you can interrupt him back.
I don't want to,
good
dear.
arguments.
I don't want to talk to Jay. Is that so hard to believe that I have no interest in talking to someone like Jay? He seems like a phony to me. I can read his script. I could literally reply to myself as Jay.
What's your counter?
Okay, I'm not as good as Illmatic, but
what's your rebuttal to the premise that any non-EO worldview is contradictory at a paradigm level?
How many times have you changed religions in this lifetime, dickbag? Gonna talk about consistency? Yeah, right. Let's see your abs. Oh, okay, cool. See you later. Next.
He'll just say that's irrelevant.
And I would be like, yeah, lats, belts.
He could just say
that
he was incoherent in the past and suddenly became coherent.
You're coming back from a massive disadvantage if you've changed religions even one time.
Okay.
Let alone what for? I don't even know.
I don't see how this is a response to his premise.
I reject the premise to the extent that I'm not even going to acknowledge it, because acknowledging a premise actually bolsters it to some extent. It's not even good enough to bolster via acknowledgement. Like, who would ever be convinced by such a thing? There'd have to be, like, in order to have that position actually, like, I could make that claim, right? Because I have hyperbolic mushroom penises in my thing.
Okay. Maddox here. Maybe it might bring sanity.
I am purifying, clarifying, qualifying, and optimizing presuppositionalism. Every single assertion is presuppositional. Like circularity, everything's always circular within axioms.
Yes, a presupposition is something that you assume before making an argument. Okay.
Trivial case is language. You presuppose.
Any worldview has presuppositions at a paradigm level, but the point is that which ones account for knowledge and which ones don't. That's the point of the argument.
You have to have knowledge priority,
because there are mutually exclusive worldviews, so they can't all account for knowledge simultaneously.
That's why you have to have a priori, either definition, ideally demonstration of knowledge. Definition with no demonstration can be easily sabotaged.
What's the argument that your worldview isn't contradictory, for example, at a paradigm level?
Well, first of all, we have to say, STFU Socrates, you don't have a point. We deny the validity of this method outside of the domain in which it's well defined as having had a precedent of a proof of concept, which ain't the way it's being used right now with snake tongue, deceivers on the server. What's up, Scotty?
Since you say that God is the universe, would you hold that the universe accounts for knowledge and the preconditions for intelligibility?
That's two questions at once. There's a question of where's it latently existing and what allowed us to access it.
Yeah, so tell me, what allowed us to access intelligibility? Give me that.
Sapta Rishi, 7 rishis who had the Vedic texts or sutras revealed to them. Isn't really a translation for this, but think of it as like a lot of penance and then a lot of meditation and a lot of focus and concentration, and then all of a sudden there's a book that they could just read the entire universe all at once. Book being very big tent book, not a literal reading book, but a sequential citation.
Yeah, I don't. So
that's how we account for it.
You still haven't Yeah, I'm saying like what are the preconditions for knowledge?
Existence and causality. And the Saptarishi, well, if you want to access that knowledge, you need the Saptarishi who were the mediators of it.
Yeah, existence and causality, they can exist in, concrete forms, and they can exist as, mere transcendental
They only exist in one way.
The whole point is that what accounts for those categories? I don't think you've given an answer.
Are you asking me to define meaning?
No, I'm asking you what accounts for these things, existence and causality.
Or the axioms that properly align knowledge. Necessary conditions for the reception of knowledge. Not sufficient, but they're necessary.
And how do you? Yeah, but how do you know that that's the case necessarily?
It may not be the case necessarily, but if somebody wanted to deviate
because
from it being the
it
case
doesn't
necessarily,
seem to me if I were to deny everything you've said, I would arrive at a logical contradiction.
But again, you're presupposing that the Socratic method is actually valid. It's not valid.
So if we're going to say that your worldview has some level of logical necessity to it, then that would entail that the contrary is impossible. There is some contradiction entailed in denying your worldview, but there isn't. So your worldview is not necessary.
Stop.
At least not logically necessary. I know there's different forms of necessity.
You're presupposing that these contradictions are meaningful on a level that they may not be meaningful. I agree there is a level on which there is meaning to this contradiction thing being a problem, but not every single logical, quote, fallacy is actually a fallacy, right? Necessarily. Understand that, right? Church of Jen? Right.
So, is the universe logically necessary?
Again, that depends how you want to define the term logic. It becomes problematic to define that term.
Well, logical necessity just means that there's some contradiction entailed by denying that's the case. So it's affirmed via the impossibility of the contrary. It just has to be. It has to be the case. It has to be the case.
Understand what I'm saying? That I'm denying the premise. If there's some kind of quote contradiction extrapolated, that actually means anything, because I really
because there's no contradiction in saying the universe doesn't exist. So
there is a contradiction to say the universe doesn't exist. So you can't account for this conversation. Then to say there's no causality, the argument there is a little more complicated.
Yeah, you're kind of confusing it here. So necessity has different kinds of modes, right? There's logical necessity, and then there's metaphysical necessity. Those aren't the same thing. So something could be logically necessary, but not be metaphysically necessary. And the opposite is true. You could have something that is metaphysically necessary, but isn't logically necessary. Like, for example, God is not logically necessary, but some theists would argue that it's metaphysically necessary. It's necessary for this conversation to even be had. So, so the point is that you got to be wary of the different types of modalities that you're using for necessity, because they aren't equivalent, and a lot of people make this mistake often.
Okay, well, can you help me then, please?
Well, I just said, so there's metaphysical necessity, which just entails that something exists independently of all other contingent things. So it exists absolutely. It cannot fail to exist. But that doesn't mean that it's logically impossible for it to exist. I mean, there's no contradiction in saying that God doesn't exist. So God is not logically necessary. But one could argue, at least it's ingrained within the definition of God that he's metaphysically necessary.
I thought metaphysics was like coming basically from the position that metaphysics isn't even necessary, period. Iomatic.
Jen.
Hi. What's up?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. I was gonna ask, Jen, are you a dialetheist?
Not really big on labels.
Yeah, I guess. But like, do you believe that there are true contradictions? Like, if I were
There's something's true.
Say,
depends on whether it contradicts an axiom.
Well, if I were to say, for instance, that if I were to just reject, like say that contradictions are fine, like, do you have a problem with that?
Yeah. Could there be a proposition which its conjunction is P and not P, and it can be true?
Yeah.
That's what you call a truth explosion.
What?
No, but you've whole.
It's a condition
so you
for a
reject
truth
the law.
explosion.
You reject the non-contradiction.
Hold on a minute.
Right?
Hold on a minute. Yes, under most axiom systems, it is not possible to have that be true. There are some circumstances where you could describe what's happening as that, but it would be useless.
Yeah, yeah. So you qualify because you qualify as a dialetheist because
well, okay. Can women enjoy rape? Can you have sex with someone you hate? There's the problem, right? Language is already paraconsistent.
A dialetheist would say that they could even be a minimalist about this and say that there's at least one true contradiction, and they believe that that true contradiction exists. So,
is enjoying rape a contradiction? And this is Molyneux's. This is Stefan dumbass Molyneux's argument, right? Answer that question, and I'll if you can answer that, I can answer your first question.
I agree. Stefan Molyneux is a dumbass, but the point is that his thing is to basically define things and just say that anything that is contrary to the definition that I provided for this word results in a contradiction. So yes, under some definitions, enjoying rape would be a contradiction. Yes.
Yeah, the question is generally,
if you just define
necessarily impossible to enjoy rape,
and if you just define rape within the category of just being, abnormal sex or whatever, then no, it's not a contradiction. But if you define it as unwanted sex, then yeah, you cannot want unwanted stuff, right?
So it sounds like you're very convinced about that, but I'm saying some people might not.
Look, the point. Yeah, you're bringing up tangents to deviate from what we're asking. So, do you believe that there's a proposition? Do you believe that there is a proposition that contains P and not P, and that it can be true?
Not in any system of logic worth anything.
Wait, why?
Because it could cause a truth explosion.
What's the argument for that? I mean, not necessarily.
You never want a truth explosion.
Graham Priest, for example, says that the truth explosion just applies to certain propositions which contain P and not P and are also universalized, right?
Yeah, fine. Well, they want to make that assertion.
Necessary contradictions, but that principle of explosion doesn't apply to all propositions which contain P and not P.
The principle of explosion is a principle whereby if you axiomatize a thing and not a thing, you can generate anything being true.
No.
Sorry, but I actually have a background in math, and I know that this is a fact.
I don't care what your background is in. Like, we're just asking you, and you said no because that results in a truth explosion, but that only refers to some propositions, not all propositions.
if on the fundamental level of your reasoning, not P, are equally true, fucked. Basically have a perpetual, truth explosion, which renders there no difference between the truth value of a false thing and a true thing. My professor said, if false is true, then anything is true. And I really like that quote because he's so smart.
No,
I think we're kill screening a bit, and I think we need to kind of reel it back in. So Darth, what Darth HQ just tried to tell you is that like what you're describing isn't exactly like applicable, like in the way that you're trying to say it.
I mean, he doesn't have to accept the metaphor, but it's an apt metaphor nevertheless. Like we have to justify any steps in
because one proposition containing a contradiction being true doesn't lead consequently to all propositions that have contradictions being true.
That's why I qualified it. Hence why I qualified it.
Graham Priest would say, yes, there are false propositions. He's not a trivialist in saying that all propositions are true or whatever. He's just saying that there are some, like for example, the liar's paradox, like a self. This statement is false, right? It could be true under, some conventions and parent-consistent logic that don't have to conform to the classical laws of logic. So it would be true under. It would be true. I'm not done. It would be true under a parent-consistent logic system, not applying the 3 laws of classical logic. But he's not saying
invalid, right?
He's not saying that because there could be this one proposition that contains a contradiction, a conjunction of P and not P, and it being true, that therefore all propositions are true, or that all propositions can be true as a result of that. That's just false.
I agree with you. The part at the end is only true if P and not P is instantiated on the axiomatic level. In math, there's only axioms in application. Well, the Zermelo ZPE axiom? They trying to unify everything under a single axiomatic thing, but that leads to the... Dang, I've forgotten the name again. What's the...
Yeah, so this is...
Power consistent logics are axiomatized. That, like, you're treating maths as if it's like there's one axiom system, but there's lots of axiom systems.
Pause. Can we just establish what the double sphere thing is, because I've forgotten it? Banach, need some sort of
paradox.
Again, Jen, do you concede the point that you were wrong that dialetheism does not lead to trivialism or a truth explosion?
I'll concede that I'm not gonna go back on what I said, that if it P and not P are instantiated on the fundamental level of causal, whatever you want to call it, metaphysical fundamental tendency, that
okay, good faith, get rid of her. We're done. We're done here.
But yes,
we don't do this in my Discord, dude. We don't do this in my Discord. If you want high tier conversations, you can go to my Discord. We don't do this retard level stuff.
Do you want to raid the Discord right now? We could. He's on.
He's on.
Yeah, we should. Let's all
he
go.
He never pings. He usually pings. He usually pings. People.
Yeah. Well, he's on. But I'm curious about what you're talking to Jen about. So, is she saying that paraconsistent logic, specifically dialectic, they get rid of the principle of explosion by getting rid of, I think it's addition, right?
I didn't say any of that. We had a misunderstanding, and he got frustrated. And if you want to go blow off some steam with Jadar, that's fine, and I'll be here. When you're... No.
I was curious actually about, like, if
I was talking to Darth, but yes, I do want to talk to you. If you're not going to be a poo head like every other time we've talked, but
hey, Jen, I am very generous in our conversations, I think. But I am curious about that point on dialetheism, if you want to comment.
Well, Jen, you were saying something about the Banach-Tarski paradox. Is that
Well,
the
she
paradox that you were
seemed
thinking about?
to imply
Thank you very much,
first.
dear.
She seemed to imply first that somehow one true proposition which contains the conjunction of P and not P. If there could be at least one proposition which contains a contradiction, then that would lead rise to like a truth explosion, right? Where all true propositions would have to contain a contradiction, and I'm saying no, that's false. I mean, what? What's the connection between dialetheism and trivialism? Because trivialism would just say all propositions are true.
In classical
That's
logic, you have the
distinct.
principle of explosion, but there are other axiomatized formal systems which don't have the principle of explosion.
Well, and
I
they
feel like,
do this by getting rid of addition, right?
what do you mean addition?
It's one of the inference rules.
Flying hell are you talking about, dude?
What inference rule are you talking about?
It's just one of the 18 or so inference rules in logic and sentential logic.
What are you adding?
Okay, the principle of explosion goes like this, right? It goes P and not P, P or Q, which is by addition, at not P, therefore Q. So from a contradiction,
Are
anything
you
can
calling
follow.
or addition?
Yeah.
Okay. They don't get rid of or, right? So you can have
Which one did they get
intuitionist
rid of?
logic. The idea is it sort of weakens negation. So they have a different sort of definition of negation. There's this thing called a hating algebra. Essentially, like with Boolean logic, which is like what models classical logic, you have like 1 is true, 0 is false. And then from that, you can sort of like define and, or, implication, and not. In a hating algebra, which is the foundation of intuitionalist logic, you still have and or, and you still have a concept of not. It's just slightly different. And it just doesn't allow you to prove as much. So you can get away with not being able to like prove everything in that same sense.
I'm not starting from the same place presuppositionally as you guys, so it's basically impossible to reconcile the dialects here.
And just to be clear, it's I'm calling it addition, but yeah, okay, disjunction,
And you're saying
introduction.
I mean, that's not okay. Here's the thing: like P and not P instantiated on the fundamental level being a problem, and some type of paraconsistency. Those are not in any way the same thing, and it appears that you think that they are.
Well,
Do you care to address that allegation?
Of course, my opinion is going to be much more foundational about classical logic. I'm going to want to say that along the lines of the I think her name is Gilles Scher, who writes on this in the literature, that when we talk about classical logic versus some other competing logical system, that it is kind of a non-starter in that I view like classical logic as normative and constitutive for thinking, almost like a formal law, that these things are kind of background operant, even in uttering some other logical system.
Listen to me. If that were true, you wouldn't even need to state them.
They're implicit in
then
every.
Why do they need to be made explicit?
Well, I mean, just because you have the domain of philosophy that asks questions like this.
Mm-hmm. Do we have any answers? Any
that's
good ones?
Okay.
I thought you were a Christian. I was expecting you to say you grounded everything in God being the one.
He is.
Well, of course
I would have thought you would have taken some sort of Neoplatonic LARP here.
Well, people accuse Orthodoxy of being Neoplatonic, even though we.
Well, it is because Christianity inherited. Actually, I wanted to tell Darth that Christianity inherited the oral tradition of Platonism. Comment I wanted to make just generally.
Somewhat. I mean, Saint Maximus the Confessor, one of the key EO theologians, he was inspired by, Plotinus is the one, and he had some Neoplatonic sympathies, but a lot of orthodoxy both borrows and, applies different things onto Neoplatonism.
Mic check. Yeah, definitely that's been an accusation. And ultimately, just because like we can talk about things from Kant or we can talk about things from Hume or Plotinus, I mean, obviously it doesn't thereby mean we were Neoplatonic or Kantian or something.
Right. I don't think you guys reduce down to being Neoplatonists. There's
Well, if you're making the claim
definitely-
that you need your worldview for logic, you're not going to ground that in some type of Platonic argument. Again, absolute. What are you going to ground it in? The Bible?
No, it's of course grounded in one.
So that's Neoplatonism.
Well, again, this is kind of word concept fallacy. This is saying,
Mhm.
well, geez, it's the same etymology, so it must be the referent must be the same.
Calculus is also Neoplatonism. We just don't realize that it is. But it's like, calculus
Bruh.
doesn't get around the problem, quote unquote, of Platonism. Come on.
You realize when he's saying that God is the one, excuse me, he's saying that it's grounded in a particular type of absolute existence, but it doesn't need to be, the same type of Neoplatonic absolute existent, right?
I mean, aren't all absolutes similar in some sense?
Absolutely.
That's what I meant.
But the point, he brought up just because you're using, similar etymology from something else doesn't mean that the thing that you're referring to is going to be the same as something else, right?
We go back to the logical systems thing and the P and not P thing.
Where did this start? So why are you bringing it up?
So that people don't understand how to reason properly.
I think reasoning depends on the context. Like when we're doing mathematics
in reasoning.
Well, no, because it is context dependent, right? So I can give you examples
That's an assertion
of situations.
with no evidence. It's actually false. You want
Well, I'm
that
about
to be
to give
true,
you an
but it
example.
isn't.
I can give you an example.
I will never be convinced of non-dualism as a fundamental metaphysical precept.
That's quite close-minded. I'm about to give you an example.
Why not
It's
just say
the perfect
monism?
level of open. It's the perfect level, just to be a bitch. I think it's. I will, but go ahead, try to. I mean, yeah.
Okay.
Hate me, brah.
Okay, so when we're doing like
Non-dualism.
finite reasoning, the classical laws of logic are like fine. Okay, but imagine a situation where you have an infinite amount of people in a line, all facing the person in front of them. So you can think of it as
that.
okay. Well, I'll talk to the people who can imagine then. So
They can't either. You can just delude yourself into thinking that you can, but continue.
okay, I thought you did maths. You don't deal with like the natural numbers.
I'm just not such a midwit that I need to delude myself about being able to hallucinate infinity. Continue, please.
Are you a finitist or what?
I don't think there's a word in your language for what I am, so why don't we just continue with your little idea about a million, gajillion, infinity,
This is
gazillion
so
people in a
snarky
line
and
thing.
Wow.
Okay, well,
Wow,
does anyone else
just
want to
wow.
hear? Okay, it's interesting. So we've got an infinite amount of people in a line. You can think of there being a person at the natural number 1 and a person at the natural number 2 and 3 and so on. Okay, so we've got a natural number amount of people and they're all facing the person in front of them. So person 1 is looking forward, person 2 is looking forward, and so on.
You skip
Okay.
to the part where you start chopping up brains?
Nope, that's not here. So person 2 claims all the people in front of them are liars. Person 3 claims the same, and so on and so on. Okay? So we have a situation here where everyone's making a claim, and we can ask a simple question. Is person 1 telling the truth? If person 1 is telling the truth, that means everyone in front of them is a liar. If everyone in front of them is a liar, that means, well, person 2 is a liar. If person 2 is a liar, there's someone in front of him that's telling the truth. That's a contradiction. You can simply see if person 1 is a liar, then someone in front of him is telling the truth. The person in front of that person is a liar. That means there's someone in front of him that's telling the truth, and that's a contradiction. Okay? So we have a situation here where classical logic is not sufficient to reason. If you want to treat this situation as like not in the domain of things that we should be reasoning about, then fine, right? If you want to reason about finite things and just like talk about little things in your circle, then fine. But if you want to expand what you want to reason about, you're going to have to expand your notion of reasoning. It's similar to, you know, how we talked about triangles having 180 degrees. But then you expand your notion of geometry, right? And there's triangles whose angle sum doesn't add to 180 degrees. And it's useful. So that's
No,
kind
it's
of what
not.
happened. It's not. General relativity.
Oh, now we got to invoke general relativity. Wow, just wow. When you have to invoke a theory you don't understand,
What do you mean?
it's been controversial since its inception, to justify a tenuous, clearly self-referential, and viciously circular false argument, you know you're on shaky ground.
Okay,
In physics,
you're a
I
troll,
would
dude.
never, ever, ever cite general relativity. Not because necessarily that I didn't understand it, but that I don't like anybody understands it.
What the fuck are you talking about?
I'm going ahead and calling
I was
your bluff is
waiting
what
for
I'm doing.
someone to say that.
Called calling a bluff. My uncle taught me how to play poker when I was a kid. I made a guy cry once. I'm pretty sure he's not the only man I've made cry. Back to metaphysical necessity. There's a big difference between having to invoke a third option when you've been working with only two options in terms of your outcomes in your matrix of determination and possibility. That's not the same thing as instantiating a contradiction on the fundamental level of metaphysical definitions or axioms or whatever you want to call them. Those are completely different things. Yet people want to say they're the same. That's not a good sign, is it? Those are like basically two ends of a gigantic spectrum. And I'll actually call attention to somebody named Boltzmann, a great guy. He was persecuted so much that he killed himself. He didn't know as much as I do, but he had not exactly similar idea, but you know, a secular version of my stuff to some extent. Someone didn't already know all the stuff that I do.
I'm not even sure what your position is. What are you claiming?
A unified field model, physics, can ground. Any other unified field model? Anything? You don't really need to ground unified field models when you already have traditional ones that exist since antiquity. It would actually be offensive in some cases to think that, you know, we could do better than the extant models. That is my position. Yeah. On a short clip, you know, hyperbolic mushroom penis ought to do it. I suppose I should share that again, but I don't think stage 1 allows images, so I guess I'll have to go to main stage chatter, or how about I'll go to stage 2 chatter, or just be like on the down low. Here we go. You'll get to see, I'm actually working on some new art, so if you want to go to stage 2 chatter, I just took this picture like a couple hours ago. Now, if there's any like super important comments in the chat, I'll check them out, but I find sometimes it's like just too rough to read what's in the chat. On weed, yeah. That's great. Some great advertising.
And this is what grounds all possibility.
Did you see it? Hey, what's up, Moonstone? Oh, well, I don't know, maybe, but it's interesting that your mind went there.
Jen, what the hell is that?
I didn't come up with this. So the greatest bit, total plausible deniability with regards to this theory. It's somebody else who discovered it using like computer type, you know, software thing. Wolfram. It's called a hyperbolic figure 8 knot complement. It's basically the same theory as me, but expressed in a computery way, I guess. I guess you could say it's the universal mind, the animating potential. Okay, it looks like everybody's off the stage now, except for 2 people. Is this going to be my time to bow out now, or what? Anybody have anything else for me to say, or are we wrapping this up?
Well, I guess if everyone else was gone in that other conversation, it wouldn't be detracting to ask you what I wanted to ask you earlier. What you thought about photons and just how they might play a role in the mind, or if they were the mind, according to what you believe.
Well, who are you right now? What's talking to me right now?
A human being? Oh, the eye that asks.
It's not a sack of flesh that's talking to me. It's a singular thing. The thing you're talking to me from is a one thing. Usually that's associated with your name, right?
Yes.
Are you your name? No, it's...
Am I exclusively my name? No, but I mean...
It's just a thing. It's a tag to be a shorthand, a mnemonic device associated to another thing. But what is that other thing? We just presuppose it, right? Again, it's the classic shitty metaphor time.
Are you differentiating between, like, the I that explains the rest of me kind of a thing?
I'm talking about you and your specifically your physical substance. I'm talking about materialism and what's observable and empirical. Well, it comes down to what's observable. So we're getting to what is the actual observable substance, not what does the observable substance generate as a hallucination, aka I think therefore I am. Obviously goes nowhere good. Not that. But what is a material substance? And the answer is something with light. Because light is from the sun, and then that goes in food, and then you eat food, and the argument is the light is not just random broad spectrum, like what they call white noise type thing. Ordered. Do you know what a broad spectrum signal is?
And no.
Okay. Sunlight that comes doesn't have any preferred it has a lot of different frequencies in it. Following me right now?
I think somewhat. I feel like you kind of avoided my question.
I'm answering.
But I'm happy to listen to you, though. So.
I'm answering your question. Your question, because it's false to say, well, the light in the sun is the same as the light that animates us.
Well, I never said that. I mean, to be clear.
I'm saying that is not what I'm saying. I'm saying there's an ordering process that happens during the consumption of food that there's the light ordered, aka the thing responsible for the axes of symmetry in the body. The justification for the axis of symmetry. So people come from the other position. They don't have any way to explain, whatever, predict the symmetry in the brain and body in general. Following still?
I believe so.
A situation where we can establish more or less conclusively that there's a photon or ordered photon waveform animating body. We can be sure is there materially. And that thing is, connected somehow to a sphere, but also somehow to that hyperbolic figure 8 thing. That's like your fundamental thing, and then you do topological deformations on that to get digestive system and sorts of things. Mushrooms, apples, blah, 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 blah. Everything. I've had this other theory that there's too much energy coming in that form starts to become... Normally the form for the Earth is a sphere, but then if it gets super energized, then it sort of partially transitions to that higher form, because that's the 3+1, and sphere is the 3. So it's just gets so much energy that it goes from 3 to 3+1, and then becomes the H of 8 complement rather than just a sphere, and then that action puts energy into the core, like nugget or whatever, the center, which then causes emanating waves, which is what gives you your volcanic eruptions. So anyway, that's just an aside. So back to this thing, we have this problem of defining I when you can only establish that one thing exists, which is this photon waveform that animates the entire body, right? So how do you responsibly give dualism when all you can establish is non-dualism, aka there's just one waveform there? Hello?
Yes.
Essentially, this poetry? What is this? I can't even understand anything you're saying.
The hard problem of consciousness.
The fuck?
You made a
You're
distinction
familiar-
before regarding the brain. You said that the mind produces the brain. Is that correct?
Is the only possible way for that causally to be coherent, because the only accounting for the ordering of the brain, aka the axis of symmetry, something
Okay.
which is pre-ordered. You have
And
to
I promise
account
this isn't a trap. I'm just trying to understand because I've
I
read
don't
that
think
there were
it's. I don't
studies
think
done.
it's a trap. It's fine. I'm just.
Well, I'm
you
sorry.
know,
I'm
concerned
prefacing what I'm about to say. I'm okay. Well, just because I read a study that they found that in mammalian brains in the frontal cortex to produce biphotons, and if indeed the mind is light and the mind produces the brain, then that would seem to be. But I mean, again, I don't think that discovery is very well fleshed out, to say the least. But just wanted to hear what you thought.
It's more than just that, though. You can't just, because if you say the mind produces the brain, that makes it sound like it's some sort of villain where it's like it's more that it's not like the mind is just like poof, there's the brain. They're in a
it animates it according to what you might say.
No, we can't even talk about animation because neither of these is actually the animating principle. We're just on the level of physics, right? Physicality right now. Are we arguing? We're arguing light is there, ordered, body is there. We haven't even gotten to an ordering principle yet. Something different. Together, we're just establishing that from the very get-go, we're talking about a first cause. So it's the mind that first animates the body, 5-week mark, when the heartbeat starts. And the mind is what gives the ordering of the body. But as that goes, there's a cycle between the mind and the body where body leads the mind and the mind orders the body. That makes sense? There's a bivalent cycle?
To be honest, my Discord closed for the last few seconds, but I believe I'm still following you.
There's two questions. There's supreme causality, like what is the prime cause within a particular cycle, and then what does the cycle actually do? So the cycle starts at heartbeat and the fetus. It's when the mind starts to cause the body, but it's not like the mind is unilaterally causing the body. That never happens. The mind just synchronizes the body, and then they bilaterally sustain each other. And you have all this order in the body. He totally explains the order. Baby, otherwise you just have a clump of cells, right? Which is what, appear to be predicted by this other garbage. Anyway, that, still hasn't answered the question of who you are, right? Because we're just talking about what is. The question of what is and who you are and what that means relative to whatever, not quite the same question, are they? But we're starting to understand why the question of who you are, what you are, blah, 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 is sort of very hard to answer because there's only really one material substance to your consciousness, and that's light. Particular type of light, but light nevertheless. And this light is really only operated, or the animating principle of light is this hyperbolic figure 8 thing. It's like the light matter sort of equivalent. Whatever. I don't want to go into the whole thing, but fundamentally, looking at 3+1 being the thing that predicts everything else. So, what are you relative to 3+1? Well, you're just a little crystal that the universe shat out, a beautiful, unique snowflake. And so we have non-dualism, but we need to establish the most meaningful dualism. That's where I come in and I say, well, this is the most meaningful dualism on this level, but it's more than one type of level. There's more than one level. There's not just dualism. And there's tons of implementation for the systems that exist, but fundamentally systems that invoke non-dualism, dualism, and then a bunch of other derivative levels. Whatever extent is necessary. That's not a precedent in math. So to try to jump on that, to argue that that's not logically consistent, just to say as an aside here, be contradicting mathematical stuff that's been in use for 300 years now. So I wouldn't go that road, just to quickly front run any possible malarkey. Harlequin, do you have anything to say to that? What do you think about my dissertation about the hard problem?
Well, it's hard because, Jen, I feel like some of that was shorthand, which I can understand for the sake of expediency, but I was just trying to follow along. I don't have a whole lot of particular thoughts that jump to mind. Because a lot of territory was covered, but I had at one point, yes, I wanted to bring up just what you thought about how photons might be playing a role, because supposedly we can measure these biphotons that are being produced by the brain in the frontal cortex. And I just thought that was an interesting thought. So, but I appreciate you sharing.
Your mind is made of photons, but it's just like, it's not just one photon. It's like a bunch of them.
Yeah. There's different. Yeah. Well, supposedly according to this study, but.
You're talking about a study that isolates a particular transition of photons, a sub-mechanism within the mind. Mind is itself the total thing all at once put together.
Okay.
That mind makes the brain. That mind is made of light, but that mind is like nothing. Like so when you get to these questions, like what's independent of the mind? Nothing is independent of the mind in that sense. It's not a question of what's independent of what. Nothing's independent of anything. The question is what causes what.
Right. No, I hear you making
That's why the other day when I was commenting like on the emotionality of that was arising, it's like there's no place for that in what we're doing because we have to focus on the question so deeply before we can even start to actually see what we're even talking about. Hear what people, say to each other and how they talk. Like I can tell they're not grasping the core concepts. So I don't really mind coming back to it as many times as necessary, I'm good. What do you think of this Euler 2? Did you want to go back to some heavy duty Socratic trolling?
Yeah, sure. Why not? What do you want to say?
I don't know. Socratic method makes me afraid to assert anything. I was thinking it's like really incentivizes a lot of horrible behavior.
It's all in good fun.
I don't know. I don't think it is. Like, it's honestly making me think it's like turning into a madhouse. Gotcha moments. I mean, aren't we a little bit better than that? I wouldn't debate that way, seriously. If I thought somebody's worldview was contradictory, I wouldn't try to give them a gotcha through a Socratic method.
What would you do?
What would I do? It depends on the situation. I feel like helping people, but it's always down to how much they're willing to let me help them. The Socratic method almost never works unless it's applied to where it does work, where it works extremely well.
Are you referring to like how I was talking to you earlier?
The idea that mining contradictions is somehow going to mean that it's a mark against my worldview, which it isn't.
I was giving you examples to expand your worldview. I wasn't giving you examples to contradict your worldview.
You're presupposing that you can improve my worldview, which is like, no.
Yeah, that's what I'm assuming.
Everybody wants to teach me something. I get that. Everybody thinks
a good listener?
Teach everybody something. All right, listener. I mean, there's more to sensing than listening, right? So there's like deeper techniques of perception than listening.
It just it sounds like you have like a narrow view of mathematics. So
I have a good level of discernment. It's not really to you to judge whether it's narrow or wide, and maybe yours is not discerning enough.
Yeah, true. Might not be.
Can't really speak. Well, one shouldn't attempt to make authoritative statements unless one has something to justify one's authority with, which, quite a bit varies depending on the right?
But it sounds like you were making authoritative statements earlier as well, though.
I could justify my authority, though, right? So
can you how?
That's why appeal to authority is not a fallacy. It's appeal to an unjustified authority that would be, no reason to necessarily consider what someone was saying.
Cool. How are you justified?
That is the fallacy, yeah. It's never a fallacy to appeal to authority in and of itself. It's just when it's not irrelevant or related. Well, yeah, so when it's not irrelevant or real authority.
So you said, I have some background in math. That's what you said? and then you went on to say a bunch of like incorrect things. So just
That would be a necessary, not a sufficient condition. Like having studied math would be probably a good place to start to comment on this stuff, but I'm making wide inter-domain comparisons and reductions and expansions and boundings and such. So yes, I mean, having a degree in math would not be enough to say what I'm saying, but it would be a good start.
Okay.
When you say what I said is wrong, it's like I can justify all my positions. I am not looking to be, necessarily hostile, so I just remain. I can accept all the stuff that's correct, and a couple things have to be changed. But I would like it if I made a mistake for you to point it out, rather than passive aggressively being like, "Well, what you just said is wrong. Okay, this is wrong." It's like, I
don't think that's how I approached you before. I think you just didn't want to listen.
What's the error? What's the error?
I explained it before.
Don't say I made an error. Say what the error is. Well,
that's exactly what I was trying to say before, and then you didn't want to listen.
I don't agree with the premise. Right? I disagree with the premise.
Which one?
That the Socratic method reveals the validity of another method.
No, I wasn't being Socratic. I was giving an actual example.
The notion that any kind of logical fallacy is valid means to dismiss an opinion is itself the Socratic fucking method, and I don't like that I have to be the one telling you this.
I'm not sure what you mean, but that's okay. It's not my dog. It's Harlequin.
No, I'm talking to Harlequin, but the fact of the matter is that I will only accept a rival viewpoint to my worldview.
That's what I was presenting.
I wouldn't know, but an extrapolated contradiction from my worldview is not a rival.
That's not what I was presenting.
It's just somebody being a pedantic asshole, Socratic nitwit.
That's not what I was doing. I was presenting you a different view.
Different view.
Yeah.
Which was something
which is
about my view being not open enough, right?
No, that was a small remark, but I can explain. So I think your view is narrow. That's what I do think. Okay, and the alternative view is
that's fine.
Projecting.
No. What you think about me is true about you.
I don't think my view is narrow, but that's okay.
It is. It is. I'm
is
psychically clear. Yeah. What you're seeing in me is actually you. Oh, I'm so powerful.
Okay, thanks. Okay,
we'll have fun with that. Maybe you should think about that before you say anything else. Maybe you regret this conversation.
Yeah, okay. I've just thought about that. That's good. Okay, let's move on. So,
well, it takes a while to contemplate such an assertion.
No, I've just done it. You should know that because you're psychic.
Sure. Oh, I should. Oh, is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. So the opposing view, which is that there is more to mathematics than we have an axiom system, and this is how people have been doing it forever. And this is the way of reasoning. The whole point of mathematics is people come up with new axiom systems to talk about new things in different ways, right? If you come across...
How come ZPE hasn't changed in 100 years?
You mean ZFC, first of all?
Sorry, whatever. I said ZPE. Yeah.
Okay.
Whoops. I guess that goes to show you how much I give a fuck about conforming to these norms, eh?
And second of all, on that comment, blah, 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 ZFC, blah, blah, blah. Okay, people are creating
ZFC,
new axiom systems all the time. Okay, all the time.
Tell me what's come along since ZFC that's actually done anything, please.
Topos theory.
Tell me one that doesn't have ZFC.
Topos theory.
Okay, never heard of it. Anything else?
Yeah, there's one based on, I think it's called Gödel's.
Gödel. You can't be fucking serious. Sorry.
It wasn't constructed by him. It's based on his views. But topos theory, there's type theory as well. So, yeah.
What do you want me to say to that? Two ridiculous anecdotes no one's ever heard of that just does nothing but prove my point. It's like the whole point is to invent other logic systems. Stuck in a rut for 100 years. How do you address that? And you come up with these two random shit that sound like they've been fucking published on some like obscure blog.
What are you talking about?
In Boston?
What are you talking about? These are like wide mainstream theories of mathematics.
Okay, and you got any anecdotal evidence to go with that?
You just need to type in topos and see the amount of things
No,
that
I
come up.
don't. I don't. I can Google myself in my last life and get like millions of responses. That literally.
What do you want from me? You
like
asked me to name some, and I gave you some.
You said that there's this whole like facility. You're making this insanely huge claim.
Which is
insanely huge claim that
Which
you
is?
you can invent random new logic systems. It's a huge fucking claim. And I say, how come nothing's gone out of ZFC? How come nothing's deviated from ZFC in 100 years? And you say,
and I just give you examples.
boobly thing, and I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Okay, I get it, but like, what is the actual example? What are these things? Where are the domains of application? What is the application of topos theory? Like, I don't even know how to spell this thing.
TOPOS.
And what is it?
It's a way of generalizing the notion of sets in a way that isn't sort of arbitrary. If you look at the ZFC axioms, they're arbitrary.
This isn't using the ZFC axioms.
No, it's not.
You're saying the ZFC axioms are arbitrary.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
So perhaps the assertion that we can arbitrarily impose logic is not actually true, or it hasn't been true since ZFC became the dominant orthodoxy, is it?
Right, but it's still an arbitrary dominant orthodoxy, which
again,
is not even that dominant anymore.
What do we mean by arbitrary? Oh, is that so? I would like to know what we mean by arbitrary here. So it says based on random choice or personal whim. When I look it up, is that a fair description?
So,
well, I could argue that arbitrary means enforced by an arbiter.
Okay, that's also fair. Yeah,
would not be
that one works.
Would be almost contradictory definition, wouldn't it?
Okay. Well, yeah, all of these apply. So, yeah, it's arbitrary.
Conversation. So we want non-arbitrary axioms, don't we?
No, that's I don't know how you do that. How would you do that?
Came up with some. Well, you just have to have pre-existing knowledge of the measurement limit, aka the mind of God, and you can just make the axioms based on that.
Okay, that would be tricky. Have you done that? Okay, that's cool.
Well, I'm not sure that there's going to be. There'll probably have to be some edits.
What are they? Are they like the Ten Commandments? What is it?
It's really hilarious that you say that.
Yeah.
It's just funny that your mind went there.
Yeah, I'm asking what the axioms are.
I haven't completed this yet, so there'll probably be a fair bit of back and forth before this is.
Is it downloading from God? Okay.
Well, no, I want to see what people want, or what people is to some extent what's best for society.
What do you think makes a good axiom system?
Right. Depends. Well, there's two layers of it, right? There's metaphysical necessity, satiated or satisfied, and then there's applicability. So every system has to sort of like an amount that is rigid and then an amount that can adapt. There's an optimized ratio between those two. The optimization ratio is actually dependent on the field. What you really want is to be able to tell what the ratio is through intuition upon discovering the field. It's like a type of meta knowledge, right?
Yeah.
Where the integral sensing comes in and aligning your desires with or your reason with your emotions. Any of that?
I don't think I disagree with that. No.
Oh, good. It's great. So, I don't know if you want me to read these or what, but I don't even know if I want to put these like in an image form because I'm worried people take them too seriously if I put them in an image form. But I've got 11 right now, and 5 of them are the measurement limit, and one of them is the cyclic principle, least action principle, completeness principle, uniqueness of infinity, uniqueness of center of mass, and set well-definedness. And one of these is going to just end up being what we're already using for math. In my system, math is one particular application of an application. Like calculus is an application of system. It's fine to use it as long as you can justify it, right? Usually you can, but sometimes you can't. And when you can't, you really can't. So that's why we want to avoid those horrible mistakes. The philosophical stage is where the mistake is avoided. Yay, we get to go in and save want to say save math geeks, and I see your name is Euler, so I don't want to insult you. Do you feel like you're a math geek, or is that an accurate description of you?
I'm not really a geek, but I associate with it. And why do you hold so tightly onto the classical laws of logic?
Because anything that's not true is eventually just going to get destroyed by the sands of time, and I don't want to not what I believe.
But it is
Like saying,
degrading.
why
Like people
do
have
you
come up
want
with new
to? Why do you
system.
want to be enlightened? It's like, well, because it's awesome. Why do you want to deviate from traditional logic or whatever?
Well, I don't, right? Like I work within it, right? So I've bought into the system of classical logic. I'm just aware that I don't have to stick to it, and that I can reason.
I don't know what that
about
means.
it.
Classical, like to me, classical logic's not even well defined, because in my mind, like the Greeks, a lot of that's borrowed from Indian stuff. For example, the
Since
Pythagorean
Frege?
theorem.
Since like
What about Frege? I didn't
that's
read any of
the
these guys.
definition of classical logic. Since that point onwards, like
Oh, okay.
as soon as they added quantifiers, that's considered classical logic. And then anything after that,
year
any
being?
deviant logic. What?
Year being? Can I get a year?
I don't know the year.
Good to know the year. Approximately, anyway. Even just the century.
The 19th century.
That's classical logic is 19th century? Been insane.
Well, they didn't have
thought classical
quantifiers
logic
before
was
that,
like-
right? If you look at Aristotle, he was just like, he didn't have sets. He didn't have good notions of like everything and something, right? So they needed to introduce like the upside down A and the backwards E.
Gotcha.
And then
Right,
as soon
I
as soon as they had that, then it's like, great, we'll call this thing classical logic.
Okay, so now you're calling syntax logic. Yes, I can see why there's misunderstandings.
No, I don't think that's what I'm doing.
I'm not saying you're doing it. I'm saying that that's what everyone's doing. That's what's been decided is the thing to do.
I'm not a historian. I don't want to misrepresent. This is just how I refer to it.
That's cool. 'Cause when I think classical logic, I assume you mean like classical, like the year zero. Tonics.
See, if you look back that far, though, they didn't even have like correct reasoning.
To me, that's latter day. To me, the Platonic stuff is so late in the game that it's almost inconceivable, but I can sort of Trojan horse my way through Platonism, but that'd be the latest I could do anything with. Anything past that is nonsense. Me, anyway. You can tell by the result. Like, what have we figured out?
So if we could figure things out with non-classical logics that like apply to the real world, you'd be in favor of that.
It's not about logic per se. It's about an approach to knowledge. It's really like...
Right. No, I'm completely with you as well. It's
So
about like
I'm
a language package to say things about things, right? And if you encounter things where the current language package doesn't accurately enable you to talk about it, then you need to enrich your language package.
Oh,
Right? If you want to talk about triangles on surfaces, you can't do that with...
disconnected for like 10 seconds. Can you just repeat what you just said?
If you want to talk about things, you need to enrich your language package sometimes. For example, with triangles on surfaces, you need to enrich your language package, your notion of what
agree with that.
it means
I
to
don't
have
agree.
geometry. Why not?
Don't agree, because there's an optimum number of words. And if
What do you mean?
more words than necessary, you create confusion. Ideas have a correct number of words to represent them. Optimized number of words that could represent them in theory.
That's like a paradox.
No, it's not. It's just a
Yeah, it is.
structural necessity.
If I say the smallest number
Oh God.
that cannot be
What are you talking
represented
about?
in less than 17 words,
It's just a belief, like things are a certain amount of complexity, and some stuff's more complex than others. It's kind of derivative complexity. It's really all I'm saying. Is really a way to push back on what I'm saying in some sense.
Mm.
It's not the same
I'm not sure what you're
as
saying.
mathematics. What I'm saying is, it's my worldview. You have to justify every step. You can't just delegate it to language that seems to answer questions, or more questions than it could. Delegate the thinking process, the reasoning process, rather. Methodologies of dubious origin and utility.
I don't know. There's like one thing in the universe you wouldn't need a very sophisticated reasoning.
You're asserting that with no basis. You don't. It's like if that were true, I wouldn't have been the one to come up with the quantum periodic table because they would have figured it out a long time ago. It didn't have to be me to figure it out.
What are you saying?
I'm the one who figured out the periodic table's 3-dimensional and what it looks like in 3D.
Okay. What's it the other direction for? What does it do?
Well, does it do?
Yeah, like we know like what horizontal and downwards is, right, in the periodic table. What's like transversal to that?
Well, it's transversal's not the right word, and integral would be the right word.
Okay, cool.
So you're just taking the thing in 2D because it's on a page, it's rendered in 2 dimensions. You're reconstructing it in 3 dimensions.
Yeah, but what's like the third dimension doing?
Just show you a picture. How about that? Because it seems like
that would work.
This is my discovery. I didn't discover the hyperbolic
mushroom.
I did discover this. These represent the same information, which is this 3+1 measurement limit.
Where'd you send it?
Stage 2 chatter.
Oh, okay. That's cool. So what am I looking at?
That's the 3-dimensional rendition of the periodic table.
So what's the big thing?
Hydrogen and helium.
The big one is hydrogen and helium at the same time.
Each one is 2, yeah. It's called just like a basic structural dualism, if you will.
Okay.
You can compare it with spin quantum numbers. Been established in chemistry, right? Very uncontroversial. There's really no arguing with this. But the funny thing is that some people try to, and that's always just funny.
Right, okay. That's a good way to shut it down. Make them sound silly in advance. Yeah, it's good.
Anyway, so it's just really a question of what type of authority that revelation confers, and that's a matter of, I suppose, some debate, but whatever. I'm more interested in greater.
I think there should be more atoms.
Well, the idea is that that's space-time. It's just super entangled on that level, and then
I got it. Okay, I got it.
Crystallized. It becomes crystallized, so it becomes separated from itself, but the information's still there to some extent, and it's like crystallized in a subset of that total function.
Yeah, makes sense.
You're like, you don't have any uranium in your body, right? Like that object is everything.
Right. So why would it even be on there? That makes sense.
Well, it's on there because that's literally everything.
Is it? Oh, okay.
Well, it's the periodic table. I mean, there's nothing. I mean, it's everything from one perspective. The perspective of pure materialism, it's everything.
Wait, how many atoms are there?
You mean spheres?
They're
not called atoms because they are divisible. So an atom would have to be something indivisible.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah, how many
spheres?
Duo atoms are there?
There's 118 on the periodic table, and each one is 2, so that's 59.
So there's 59 here. Okay.
Yeah, it's 3+1 into 3+1, or 3+1 with a symmetry axis.
Okay, let's see. 16, 25.
It's a very nice thing,
29. Times
People
2.
are interested in a meditation type activity, but don't know where to start to try to like visualize this thing in 3D. Also, move it around. Is the like
Yeah,
my
59
version
times
of my version of I guess call it organic chemistry involves permutations of the 7 slices. What's that? 7? It's almost like it's some kind of magical number.
Is it?
Well, my religion says so. So
Are you the only member?
wow, that would be megalomaniacal.
Okay.
Not only am I the only member of my religion, I am God. Ha! No. You've got me confused with Leo Gura. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, all good things come in pairs, right?
I've heard that bad things come in threes. This good things coming in pairs is slightly. I think you just made that up. I'm gonna go ahead and say it. All right.
Yeah, I did. Yep. Okay, I like the shape. That's nice. I don't know what it says though, but it's good.
Either it takes a while to realize it. Like obviously, I already have knowledge and stuff, but I don't know every single thing about it. So if you think about it for a while, you'll learn some stuff probably.
Okay.
It's an object of focus. Yantra is what it's called traditionally. It's just something you can look at and it's beautiful and just sort of, I don't want to say lose yourself in it, but it's a way to sort of the mind ready for a deeper style contemplation.
Okay. I just googled that. That's cool.
Googled what exactly?
Yantra.
Yeah.
Indian
Okay.
legend.
The older ones
Tantric.
are beautiful as well. But now that we have computers, it's like computer yantra. Hello.
Tantric traditions. Hinduism and Buddhism. Are you a Buddhist?
I mean, I suppose that depends on what you mean by Buddhist.
What do
I
you
have a
mean?
hilarious quote about Buddhism. I don't like labels.
Okay. That's interesting because the guy who's come up with the logic of paradoxes, the thing that you were talking about earlier, the paraconsistent logic, he's a Buddhist as well. And he was actually inspired by Buddhist philosophy to come up with it. So maybe there's something to it.
Yeah, I could show you like essentially maybe unifying principle to it. And I'm still trying to figure it out because there are a lot of concepts that they don't really translate, and for people to get the idea that they're like experts on these ancient concepts just because they've glimpsed at them is not a good thing. My consideration is always for the respect to the traditional teachings and that. So, but can still create pretty much create the system without even having to invoke any religious arguments. So I'm not too worried about that. You heard before, my axioms have nothing to do with any religious argumentation. I haven't even gone into moral grandstanding. It's well known for that in my last life. That was basically all I did was like ramble about morality. I haven't even done that like hardly at all.
Yeah. In your last life? What does that mean?
Means before I was reincarnated this time, the last time I walked the earth.
Right.
My wonderful shoes.
Got you. And you're like, this time I'm going to do it differently. I'm not going to talk about morality. I'm going to talk about metaphysics.
I didn't have those words per se.
Right.
But the teachers got to meet the students where they're at. So it's pretty fair.
Appreciate that.
It's a pretty fair picture.
Yeah, what's coming next? What's your next life going to be like?
I was thinking a dwarf break dancer.
That's cool. That's cool.
Because like this ancient technique of I guess the closest translation would be sort of either bow staff fighting or bow and arrow.
Oh, okay.
It's
You play Dungeons and Dragons?
No. I have
Nice.
sat in rooms where that game existed, so
Yeah. Do you not like it?
I don't really play games that much, just other than a couple times.
Mathematics is a game.
Is it? It's more like a coordinate system or a implementation of axioms.
I'm quoting Ted
Purposes,
Kaczynski.
numbers.
If you know who that is.
I've never actually read what he wrote. I don't really have any use for the ramblings of a. Wasn't he the Unabomber?
Yeah, but he was quite coherent.
And so,
More coherent than mushrooms and shit.
To I don't really have any interest in reading other people's manifestos. No offense.
You scared? Like scaredies make sense.
Oh no, it's just virginity. You know, why do you want to be a virgin when you get married? It's like,
Right.
it's like, I don't want to read every last thing. Like I did read Irvine Welsh, which is pretty.
I don't know that. What's
stuff.
that?
It's not on all the same lines as Ted Kaczynski. Like I don't think I've read any random manifestos. I perused the Communist Manifesto.
Yeah, that one's good.
It's just not my subject matter, but yeah, I did sort of familiarize myself with. Would have been the greatest extent I could familiarize myself with anything along those lines, and hardly connected at all. I'm not the person to talk about it.
Okay.
I'm somewhat alarmed at how often this person comes up, though.
Is Kaczynski?
Some kind of role model to people. That's not a good model. At least I'm just saying I hope this guy's not a role model.
No, I mean it's the whole like, if Mozart was a rapist, like would it change how you listen to his music?
Well, I think it's important to focus on ideas and not people.
Right.
Generally, yeah.
Right. That's exactly. I mean, he was a hypocrite, but that doesn't change what he said. Still good.
In my eyes, it does.
Why?
The people who I care what they said are like who did stuff in physics and math because there's a result for that. I know it's valuable. It's a result.
Yeah, but the value
of random...
it doesn't come from the person, right?
In my view, a person is not entirely separable from their ideas. Yes, the ideas should stand on their own, but credibility is instantiated through example. Through, oh, I read this and it made me feel good. No! The last reason to read something.
Wait, so if you like read like someone's physical work, like physics work, like you'll judge its truth based on the person?
I will acknowledge people who have brought truths to the forefront of knowledge or awareness. Gauss, for example, was a genius.
Yeah, but he was also mean.
I don't give a fuck.
Okay.
People say horrible things about me. People say horrible things about me. Holtzman killed himself because people were abusing him. I mean, in my view, those people should have been protected.
It's a good story, but I don't know.
I was like, oh my god, Gauss was mean. It's like, what the hell do you mean, mean? What does that mean? Gauss was mean. Big meanie?
Yeah, big
meanie.
What
does that mean? Mean. Never heard this before.
Well, he was just kind of cold, and also
cold. It was cold. Okay, so that's the thing to remember about Gauss is the fact that he was cold. The fact that he invented all this amazing shit in math. That doesn't matter.
Well,
kind of
what matters, right, is Euler. Okay, he was a nice guy. Okay, he sat down with his grandchildren, taught them math. He was a nice guy. But what's nice about Euler is if you look at his papers, he also includes his mistakes and explains how he came to the idea. Whereas if you look at Gauss, there's none of that. What you'll do is you'll like hide away in a little room, write down his mathematics, come up with it, and then he'll just publish it in its perfect state.
Oh my god, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that you're focusing on their personality differences so much. You don't care about the math they invented.
No, it's really important because it's how you understand it as well. Like,
What is the fact? Wait, what is Gauss being a obsessive perfectionist have to do with and him being mean? I don't understand the connection. Sorry.
kind of tangential, but it's important, right? Because you have to learn from them, right? And it's hard to learn from someone who is presenting their ideas in a sort of like alien way. That's why you still have people reading through Ramanujan's notebooks trying to understand like where his maths came from, because he never presented enough like clues as to how he got his ideas. And this guy's like method of coming up with new mathematics is valuable, and it's kind of hidden. I don't think Ramanujan did it out of malice. I think he just didn't care. But Gauss did hide it, because when he was asked, why is it that you do it? He said something about cathedrals and how when people build these grand cathedrals, they don't leave the scaffolding up. They don't leave the clues up as to how it was built. They just leave it in its majesty. And he wanted to be like that, aspired to be like that. But obfuscation, to present yourself as perfect, I don't know. I don't like it. So I think you should publish your axioms in their imperfection, and you can tweak them later. You don't have to wait until they're perfect.
Like I'm on a British TV show, and for like, it's university, and you're like super hot guy, and we're drunk at a party, and you're like singing a song to me.
Yeah. Okay.
Publish your axioms, girl. They don't have to be perfect. Sorry, I'd have to. Sorry. Okay. I regularly publish stuff that is not perfect. Okay, there's tons of many errors on my blog.
Can you link me to your blog?
You know what the Pareto principle is?
No, what's that?
The idea that 80% of the work is done by 20% of the people, or like 80% of stuff happens in 20%. Like, I don't know exactly how to put it into words.
Yeah. And it's like a fractal as well. Like, of those 20%, it still applies to that 20%. Like,
I know, it's so fucking trippy. Like, don't even say that, because I'm gonna start tripping. No, I'm just kidding. I can totally handle it. But I was trying to find something to say. I'm gonna DM you the thing. That's okay.
But you're in the top 20%, so that's no problem. You're fine.
I'm talking about my own like approach. I haven't even got to my approach yet. Like, my approach is, how many times do I have to iterate that in my own mind before it converges to like 90 whatever? If you iterate it once, you get 80. Iterate it again, you get, I don't even know, 96. Somebody wanna? Anybody following that?
Yeah. It's easier to do it like in fractions.
So I'd say I reviewed the article probably, it takes a while. Sometimes it's like, it seems like it's a fully formed idea, and it takes a really long time to fully get it out.
3 + 1D hyperpump.
By the way, I didn't discover that, but I feel like I have to be to some extent responsible for its relation to the world, because
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, some of the best people in history aren't the ones who came up with it. They're the ones who like made it mean something, right?
Well, I came up with quantum periodic tables, so
right.
It's not like I'm like, oh my god, I didn't come up with every single thing. I'm so sad. Like, Krishna had 15,000 wives, and it's like, I only have one husband. Like, what the fuck? You know what I mean?
This is fascinating because it's like, you're like a troll, but like this is deep. There's a lot here.
I'm not a troll.
You're like an invested troll.
Trolling is something I can do. Trolling is one of my modalities. It's not even my principal modality.
Yeah, you're like in a quantum
trolling
state.
Is just something. Well, what's enlightenment? Do you believe in enlightenment?
What does it mean? I don't know. Enlighten me.
It depends who you ask, but there's probably like at least two definitions. both
Okay.
involve it. Very wonderful, everyone who's got it loves it and wouldn't trade it for anything, like transcendent, just
I don't know what that means. Can you give me the easy one?
Well, like, just suppose what you'd get from sitting and chanting and meditating and
Yeah.
pleasant sort of. It's more than that. It has to be an integral layering to the thought process.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't cause dissonance. When you
Okay.
start out, dissonance happens. Ego's very heavy when you start out. Carrying.
Are you supposed to be thinking about specific things or trying to think about nothing?
Well, there's all sorts of techniques that one can use to approach these, what you call non-dual states. But, ultimately, it's a cessation of formation of what they call new karmas. There's always karma in the ego. It's just saying there's causality in your body, right? And just your body has causal properties. It's just pumping, it's going, it's doing. The question is what's happening to you? What is the effect of what is happening to you? Be the stimulus you're experiencing day to day. Does it stress you? What does it do exactly? So an enlightened person doesn't get new karmas. They can have pain, not suffering. There's a difference. There's a non-enlightened person that suffers endlessly from how heavy their ego is, but they don't see the heaviness because you've never had anything but a heavy ego. If you've always had a weight around your neck, I don't know it's there, kind of, right? But you kind of do. Any of that make sense?
Not much.
A lot of people have given testimony about being enlightened. So to deny that enlightenment is possible is a bit outlandish. So, I would argue lower and higher states of enlightenment, and in the higher, more discerning states, more potent states, you can change the frequency at will to not any personality, but different modalities. And one of those modalities is the troll modality.
Okay.
I wouldn't call myself a troll, no.
Yeah.
But
Would you call
sometimes
yourself
trolling-
a logic cook? I'm reading your thing about debating people who are smarter than you, and I can see your periodic table. It's nice.
Thanks.
The logic cook. Logic cooking is a common occurrence within inexperienced debaters. They have an emotional attachment to the idea that superior logic can always win a debate. Clearly, this is not true because all debate involves some degree of aesthetic appeal. I agree to that. Okay, this is going to be a good read.
Hey, I'm so glad that you're up to it. A lot of people just they hear about my rap. Sometimes I'm flattering, and they just don't even want to look at it. But pour my heart and soul into that thing. So if you can get something good out of it, I would feel very validated by that.
Yeah, it looks fun.
Don't come on these things specifically to talk about that stuff, though. I'm more interested in hearing what other people are interested in and improving, just, I don't know, what are the commons. How long have you been in the server for?
A week.
What do you think of it so far?
There's a bunch of strange people. It's kind of interesting, like a freak show.
Yeah, I get the vibe the guy who runs it's kind of likes the comedy element to it.
How long have you been here?
Not sure. Feels like a while. But I don't actually, probably at least 3 months. Not more than 4 months, I'd say.
Huh. You define winning a debate as the net consensus shift in someone's favor.
If you tell
Do you like
people,
debates or
then
do you
they'll
like
know.
discussions?
Heard it?
Do you like debates or do you prefer discussions? Like, do you like learning new things?
I've never learned anything in that sense.
Okay.
This life. Same. And I've learned this and that, but it's like meta lessons. Like, what do you expect to teach me? For fuck's sakes.
Yeah.
Why is it so important that everybody be able to teach everybody something? It's not reasonable.
Okay. That's not how I see it. I see it as like I have an opportunity to learn things from other people, whether it's because they're saying things which are true, or whether it's because they're saying things which
yeah,
aren't true.
of course. It's true, but it's not learning knowledge. It's learning facts. Sort of equating knowledge to facts to say stuff like that.
Okay, what's the difference?
Well, knowledge is integral.
Okay, I try and build concepts. I don't just try and learn like discrete facts.
So what concepts?
What concepts do I like to learn? New types of ways to do math. Fun. Like topos theory.
Okay, I guess you probably want to learn my axioms then. My axioms can do math, physics, and philosophy.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Are they good?
Not finished yet, but you can probably help me hammer them out if you want.
Okay. Are you like missing one, or like are the ones that you've got already perfect?
Don't know how many I'm missing because it's a matter of like a couple example problems because there's a chemistry and a physics. You have a couple physics domains.
Yeah. Would you say they're arbitrary?
Arbitrary. Let's look that word up real quick. Arbitrary. Because in French, tree is arbre, and it just makes me think of that. Okay, based on random choice, personal whim, rather than any reason or system.
Yeah. Being said by an arbiter.
Restrained and autocratic in the use of authority. So, well, I'm pretty dang restrained, and it's not a random choice at all, so no, it's not arbitrary.
What's restraining them?
My principle of ahimsa.
Can you explain?
Minimizing the harm. This
Knowledge
for its knowledge. Have you ever, had to, imagine, the wife is like, "Do I look fat in this?" And
yeah,
it's like, "I look fat," and sticking out
all
here
the
and
time.
there,
Yeah,
blah, blah. And he gives like a fucking 15-minute dissertation of why she looks fat in that.
Of course.
Did he tell the truth? Did he tell the truth? Was that honorable to do that? No, because the honorable thing is not to just
minimize harm, right?
Tell the truth,
Okay.
but to use the truth wisely in the interest of the greater principle of harm minimizing.
So we should just like end existence.
That is an insane type of logic.
Is it?
It's
Okay.
saying that existence is bad. Yeah, so you've gone full Gnostic.
No. Just get rid of harm. Just minimize it. So it's to zero.
You can minimize harm. You only can minimize suffering, harm, whatever.
Yeah, by getting rid of everything.
Minimize harm for others and suffering to yourself, I guess. Really,
which you can do that by getting rid of everything, right?
If everyone committed suicide at once, that stuff would stop existing.
Yeah.
No,
the things which can be harmed,
it doesn't
right?
mean we should end existence. No. It means that we should seek to minimize suffering. The same as ending existence.
But that would minimize it, right?
If you're saying that existence is suffering, then I guess it would seem that you're minimizing existence by minimizing suffering.
Whether it's suffering or not, right? Like, if there are things that can suffer, we can minimize suffering by getting rid of them.
We can't.
Why not?
Incarnation.
So you're saying we can't do what I want to do. We can't get rid of things.
If you kill yourself, you're going to have a higher probability of reincarnating into an abortion. At which point, if you still want to die, you'll be dead again. You'll be killed, and over and over and over until you lose the will to die.
Right.
So you can't die. I know it sucks.
But if we get rid of that as well, then there'd be no
You
abortions
can't get
as
rid
well.
of reincarnation. You can't really get rid of reincarnation. You can
If
get
we
enlightenment.
get rid of all the things in which they can reincarnate into,
It wouldn't be possible. I just said literally, like, everybody kills themselves. It's still like all the animals, and it's like you don't even know.
get rid of
Life
them
is really
first.
persistent. Life is really persistent. Like you don't know if there's even a quantum mechanical process where like trees could respawn animals,
Oh,
and we'd be
Boltzmann
sucked
thing,
right back
Boltzmann
into
trees.
life again.
Right. Okay. We can't get rid of those. Okay. They'll like pop into existence. You'll like reincarnate inside of them, and then
You
right.
can't.
Then they'll
die.
suffer. Oh, okay.
You can't die. So sorry.
Can't die.
Life is not that bad, is it? It's kind of awesome in a way.
I'm fine with dying. You know.
Dying sucks because you lose your mind to some extent. Well, the contents of your mind.
That's
Dying
fine.
does really
I'm fine with that.
Well, wait till it happens. Let's see. If you were fine with it, you wouldn't have forgotten your past life. If you did forget your past life, that means you were so scared shitless by the reincarnation experience that you forgot it. Like, it's probably scarier than any ride.
Okay.
Ever been to an amusement park where they had rides?
Yeah, but okay. I don't forget rides though.
You've never been on a ride, or you have?
No, I've been on plenty. I just don't forget them.
Don't forget them. What's that mean? Well, it's
no
obviously
idea.
scarier than a fucking roller coaster for sure, but it'd be that direction of terror, I suppose.
How many lives far back can you remember?
Oh, that's not relevant, is it?
What do you mean? It's relevant to my
How
curiosity.
far back would you believe?
I'm just asking you. It's like I
should-
haven't even survived one ride. I'm just curious how many rides you've survived.
Survive.
5. Nice.
I
Brave girl.
didn't say that. I said survived. I did not say 5. I didn't say 5. Okay, so
Okay.
gosh, I don't even know if I know what the answer to that is. So
Okay.
I can't really remember the last one. I just know who I was due to my personality being so fantastically
Right.
identifiable. If you try to remember your past life, it'll be worse. Like you send up one of those random people who's like trying to hang on to like some random shit from their past life. Like I
Yeah.
was a B-1 bomber or whatever. It's like cool. Nobody cares. No, that's worthless essentially.
You think
It's
like
not
they just make it up?
No, I think it's true. For the most part, I'm sure that they're telling the truth, but they're they get parts wrong or inverted because mine's quantum computer, so it's got all these inversion
Okay.
phasers or whatever, constantly
Right.
signal inverter. The signal gets inverted a bunch of times. So if you try to cling too much to the objects, aka remember the contents
Right.
of your life, you
Right.
will
Heisenberg
remember less.
uncertainty, right? Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
no, this is not the Heisenberg uncertainty. The Heisenberg uncertainty is responsible for the generation of the microstates of the mind in the first place. That's what gives you your coherent light waveform, because it's not just random white noise, broad spectrum noise. It's specific.
Feels like that
frequencies.
sometimes.
Of course, there's elements of that, but there's a highly ordered,
I hope so.
easily evidence the ordered bit. Digestion is evidence of an ordering principle of some kind.
I don't identify
Yes.
with my bowels.
Well, that makes one of us. I would say, you start from a reasonable supposition, you don't start from the supposition that, oh, I can read people's fucking minds and I can tell what they're arguing, I can tell what they're reasoning, I can tell what they think. It's like, no, at no point has anyone been anywhere close to what I was remotely even thinking when they tried to hallucinate where I was coming from on stuff. So let's just put that aside. Let's agree that there's knowledge maybe can be accessed, that we don't know to what extent we have access to it. So but definitely there's evidence of enlightenment, and I would say there's pretty strong evidence that knowledge exists and that it's a thing separate from brains. I guess that's why people want to say minds instead of brains, because brains really does sound fucking zombie tier voodoo. Does it concern you or anyone else, the level of sort of magical thinking that goes on sometimes with this stuff, with like chopping up brains and alternate universes?
What do you mean? What are you talking about? Brains in alternate universes? What about that?
Well, okay, so your background's not philosophy then?
No.
Okay, never mind. What is your background then?
Math.
Okay, thank God.
Okay.
So there's not too many examples of chopped up brains in math, is there?
Chopped up brains, alternate universes. No.
Well, stick around this Discord long enough, and you'll hear some combos about that. And I'll tell you, they've spooked me out sometimes.
Yeah. I heard something about pea brains, pea zombies.
Oh yeah, I asked this question. I was like, okay, does the pea zombie? No, they're a pea zombie. Okay, I didn't get a fucking straight answer. And I said, well, if the pea zombie doesn't know they're a pea zombie, then you can't establish that you're not a pea zombie. Dumbass. And I don't even know if I got that far in the chain of reasoning. And they just completely like, I want to just exclusively blame the full moon, but it was possibly a factor. Please stay though. You seem super cool.
Thanks.
Ignore the kooks. That's what I do. Someone gets
Isn't like reincarnation kind of similar to alternate dimensions?
Reincarnation is a standard traditional belief that has been held by quote Hindus for forever.
Yeah, but it's pretty like parallel universe-esque.
Not really. It's just saying that there's energy in the mind and that energy is conserved to some extent.
Right.
It's not
energy can change form, right?
Well, we would have no basis. Presume energy would change form without us, but sure.
Right.
There's
like
energy. There's entropy, which is think of it as disorder, but it's more of a spreading out, like a gas expansion.
Mm.
There's also order. These two things sort of gets together.
I think when people usually invoke like the concept of energy being conserved and things like that, it's because they don't really want to talk about energy being conserved. They want to talk about themselves being conserved in some sense. They're just hijacking the idea from physics.
I'm saying there's a basis. I'm not using it as a sole justification, by the way, but there's a precedent in physics to say that energy is conserved. Now, what that means, how that's interpreted, may not be interpreted correctly. But the notion of conservation of energy, hard to push against that. So to say that the energy of the mind is not conserved, well, you have to say, why isn't it conserved? You could say, well, because of entropy, but still doesn't get you to on reincarnation. Reincarnation is the energy solution. Your options are consciousness from nothing or recycled old consciousness. So recycled old consciousness takes way less energy than new consciousness from nothing. Agree with that?
I'm not sure, but it's interesting that you bring up both of these ideas because I think they are both relevant. The idea that people think that who you are, like your brain state, isn't just like energy, isn't just like electric signals or like biphoton superpositions or whatever you guys were talking about. I've never heard of that. But
it's archetype. It's resonant archetype proximity, but I haven't even gotten to that yet.
But the standard view, though, right, is that it's like point. It's structure, right, and structure is all about entropy. And then there's also electromagnetism, like signals.
Entropy has got two definitions, though. So entropy has the number of microstates.
And the other one?
As well as the generalized disorder. The notion of what entropy means in the context of a Carnot engine rather than a Boltzmann distribution. And those are slightly different definitions. So we didn't create the situation, but we are dealing with a situation where there's slightly different definitions of entropy that for the most cases are the same, or consistent to the point where you can equate them, but not always. So just keeping that in mind. I do think it'll be more useful to go with microstates as the definition rather than disorder. Because you can just define order, then order is kind of redundant.
And you're like a chemist?
Well, that's the least of what I am. History would be the absolute easiest thing one could learn from me. Because it's essentially already parallel to what's being taught. The only difference is you have a three-dimensional integral space-temporal approach to simulating microstates, which is going to solve your problem of like handedness, right? So see here, are you familiar with the handedness problem in life? Like wires?
Yeah.
Because of the magnetism of the field. It's just one field, right?
You're talking like biology or like physics?
Did you look at the mushroom? Or sorry, did you look at the mushroom thing?
I saw the mushroom.
Okay, so that's a field being the shape that's animating it, which is the hyperbolic figure 8, which is a literal math thing.
Yeah.
A mathematical shape. Okay, now I can't even find it now. Oh, here we go.
So now, what I'm asking is, when you talk about asymmetry, are you talking about it in terms of like DNA having like a chirality, or are you talking like the asymmetry in physics?
The structural enantiomers in life all being the same handedness?
Yeah, is that what you're talking about, or the one in physics?
I was referring specifically in life because these hyperbolic figure 8 fields are really only instantiated to exist in life, possibly on the planet. That's my speculation at this point. Same.
Okay. And I guess it looks like there's a sort of chirality to the mushroom as well, like the way it wraps around itself.
Well, it's like the shape itself is the inversion of the third simplest knot in topology. Which is inverted in some sense, aka it's complement, which is not the complement in the set theoretic sense that you're used to. It's the complement as in like
I'm used to. I know
set.
I'm fine.
Oh, so do you know what the complement is in topology?
They're not complement. I do, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not the complement the way that these people would be thinking of complement. Because when they think complement, they're thinking A union, not A equals universe.
Yeah.
It's not what this is, right? Like they both have a finite volume because one is a spanning set of the surface of the other or something. Like I've almost failed topology. I'm just going to say that right now. Yeah, that shape is essentially a numerical form corresponding to measurement limit, which is 3 + 1, but the 1 is infinity, just sort of sweeping that into one little quick thing. But basically, I mean, this is it. This is the building block of life. This is it. You can get another diagram to clear it, make it more self-evident. I think it's the last one on the blog. I don't know. The second to last one.
That talks about mushroom. Okay.
Yes, the second to last one. You saw that one already. Sorry, what was the original question? Like something to do with the mind or whatever? So it's like, it's just a question of how do you build the mind from this fundamental form, but this is going to give you like your basic mechanics of the body, and the mind is just the entire unifying principle of all those sub things. Just think of it as a sphere, I guess.
The mind is a sphere. Okay.
You think of it as obeying some type of principle, right? And the sphere is a geodesic, and this thing is the 3 + 1 dimensional geodesic, and it, through the work of somebody else that I haven't been able to fully validate, but if it's correct, can predict stuff like the speed of light and the various universal constants.
When you say this is a geodesic, you mean it has some like minimal structure?
Geodesic is the least energy path.
The minimal surface?
Are you familiar with least action principle?
Yeah.
Sort of that.
Yeah, okay. Like it has minimized mean curvature.
The way I'm presenting it is that a sphere's minimal entropy shape in the sense that minimizes the torque, center of mass.
Spheres are kind of minimal in a different sense, though. They're minimal in the like isoperimetric sense, right? Like the ratio between the surface area and the volume's minimal. But that's different to like the minimal sense when it comes to knot theory. There's this thing called mean
I know
curvature.
that's why we're going to unify them to one glorious whole. If you're
Okay,
interested in
okay.
helping me out.
Um,
I mean, if you're
I'm not
doing
sure what I
anything.
could offer you there, but fine.
You could unify the two, like you just said.
No, I don't. No, I see them as two different things.
Oh, well, you know. But you know, you're right.
Maybe they unified it. I mean, I've always been surprised. Lots of things are unified. So I wish you the best.
Well, anyway, probably not going to develop it too far. I'm open to other people developing it, and I'd love to develop it with them, but obviously I just got to be guard. The next thing I'll be doing is the axioms. If you want to know about them, we can talk about them when they're finally. That may take a while for me to actually get them in a form that I want to share them with a large audience, though. Just saying.
So UFM, what does that stand for?
Unified field model.
Oh, okay. Natural axioms. Okay, so I see the picture. You have the natural axioms, the information field, life, human axioms, human information, and it feeds back into the natural axioms. I don't know. Yeah, what's the difference between the natural axiom and a human axiom?
Incredible. Wow.
Humans have acid axioms, based on biology.
Such as
Your existence is pre-framed for you, such that frame human experience in the same language as biological or natural, like non-experience. Is this a new one or an older one?
I scored quite a bit, so if it's further down and it's older, okay. It was the one that said the word axioms in it.
Yeah, it's just a very broad. It's not these axioms. These axioms are actually used in
Oh yeah.
physics.
Yeah, do you
I'm
remember
gonna
what
do
you
physics.
meant, like the distinction between like human axiom
I'd need you
and natural
to.
axiom?
No, you need to send me the link. DM me the link. I can take a look at it and tell you what I meant. But I'm assuming I meant that one was for the human. That is presupposing that you're from the perspective of a human subject, and one isn't.
How long have you been doing this for? Seems quite extensive.
And what?
The blog.
2015. End of 2015, I think.
Quite long
Oh.
time. I can't find it anymore. Give me a second. Oh yeah, it's called Data, Metadata, Axioms, Definitions, and Information. That one. I'll screenshot the picture that I was looking at. So,
Oh, thank you. I didn't expect to be, under the microscope in this sense, this time. So
this isn't a critique.
No, I don't think it's a critique. It's just, it's harder than the critique, because a critique I just dismiss everything. I would never dismiss this, because this is, what do you call it? Faith.
Faith. Okay.
I said it's good faith.
Okay.
You're not trying to troll me or anything.
No, you.
At least I don't think you are.
I can read it out. I think you explain yourself. It's fine. So you're saying the universe has its own axioms, and you're calling those the natural axioms. What do you mean by that? Like, the universe has its own rules?
We can't know the laws. Do you agree the laws of physics exist?
I actually don't. Funnily enough,
I don't agree laws of physics exist.
No, I don't.
So
I
my
can get into
worldview
why.
is sort of predicated on that being a fact. If you don't
Like-
agree with that, then I can't justify my worldview, I guess.
No, you can definitely justify your belief to me. I'll listen to it. Right? I'm open to changing my mind.
Okay, sorry. It
Um,
was just it's inconceivable to me for somebody to disagree with this. So let's start over. Where do we start? What's the first question? Sorry.
No, you said.
Ah.
So I asked you what the universe, the natural axioms are, and the
Oh,
the
right. We can't. Okay, so the idea is that if you accept that the universe has laws, then
Yeah.
axioms would predict the laws.
Yeah, okay.
In some sense, the axioms would be the laws,
Mhm.
integral
Right.
to the law. The manner in which the laws would follow, structurally from themselves in some sense.
Yep.
Which you don't agree exists. Okay.
Yep.
But
And then you have
understand
human
the-
axioms.
Yeah, which is where you presuppose everything the human has. The universe doesn't presuppose those things. It's a way to frame it to see that when you're trying to understand physics, you're doing a reverse transform function to what your objectivity is doing.
Okay, so if I understand that, what you're saying is, like, reality exists and it has its own rules, right? And when you say axioms, you don't mean like the rules are like written somewhere. You mean like there are rules, they just happen and they're out there.
An
And the
axiom
hu-
like causality is saying that effects always have a cause or causes and so forth.
Right,
It's
but
not
like
saying anything about the content of it. It's just making an assertion, a structural assertion. So all laws will have tacitly accepted the axiom of causality if they're going to be called laws. Or language has no meaning anymore, right?
are you saying that the laws themselves exist beyond our description of them? Like they're independent of our description? Or are you saying in order for us to describe what's out there, we have to use the natural laws?
I'm saying that
natural
our
axioms.
I'm saying our ability to know things is predicated on our subjectivity. So we don't know what it is to know things bereft of our subjectivity. So we can't know the laws of the universe in its own language or within its own axioms necessarily. But maybe we can get something that is, in some sense, inherent with it.
Right. Okay, I don't fully disagree with that.
Laws do exist. I mean,
When I say that I don't believe in the laws of physics, I kind of mean something like quite particular. I think that we can't sufficiently describe them, like in a language.
Or
Right,
not,
like-
even if we could, let's say even if we could, okay, it's not going to give us all the answers.
Yeah, I
That's
also
why you need
agree
more than
with
one
that.
axioms. You need the subjective axioms because objective axioms, quote unquote, and when I say objective, I mean object oriented like spheres and stuff. So it is well defined. Objective oriented shit doesn't tell you anything about subjective necessarily experience, right? Like i.e. the human subject. They're two different axioms, but they both have to be consistent, aka like intercompatible, at least theoretically intercompatible, but you never intercompatibulate them or whatever. You never need to. It doesn't matter how many carbon atoms are in your body, right? Literally doesn't matter. You never know the answer to that question, right? This is a silly example, but it just makes more sense to have two UFMs instead of trying to make one UFM contorted into like being transcendent through the entire spectrum of causality, which you can't even establish if that's possible. Well, I've established that it is possible, but if it's possible, you don't know on what level you can establish it.
So,
When you start out.
so you're saying you've got like two models. They sort of like live side by side, but they're distinct. Right, one for the objective and one for the
More than
subjective.
two. I have more than two, but they're not mine. Like I don't feel I should take, credit for
Okay,
stuff.
but there's like two different ideas that deal in different domains.
There's at least two different axiom systems, but they are
Yeah.
all fundamentally grounded in existence and causality.
Yeah.
They're not independent in the sense that you can separate them from those. They're all facets, and that there may be even more facets of of causality. And so this hyperbolic figure 8 could argue is another facet of a numerical sort of fundamental understanding of causality. 3 plus 1. The sphere isn't actually minimum torsion shape. It is within a certain band of energy. The sphere is the geodesic, quote unquote, aka the minimum energy shape, aka the shape predicted by laws of physics, aka minimum torsion field. Then when you get to a higher energy state, the minimum torsion field is the hyperbolic figure 8, not complement.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's like hopefully you enjoy that, because to me that I love this stuff. Nectar to me. It's just making all the boring shit in math worth it. Just how it feels to me. I don't know how it feels like to you.
No, I have the same philosophy in that sense. Like, I try and breathe life into the things that I think about. I don't try and keep them cold, like dusty, just like a bunch of facts, as you were saying earlier. Yeah.
No, because then all you're doing is deceiving yourself into thinking you're smart, and it's like, fuck that. I don't need to fight convince myself that I'm smart. Like, I'm a dumbass. I already know. Thanks.
Yeah, I don't do it for like ego and stuff. I want to send you a video. I think you might enjoy it. Right, and I'm gonna head off to bed, and I think you'll really like this. So, good night.
Nice chatting. I got some stuff to do. I'll probably head out. Thanks for everyone tuning in. It's really nice to see the friends in the audience. Hey, Frank.
Hey, I recorded the entire thing, so.
Oh, you did? Thank you. Hopefully I didn't make any too big of fumbles there.
Well,
Sound
we'll see.
too fake or anything.
Yeah, no, I got you. All right, I'm going to close it out, guys. Thank you.
Bye.